All right, let's talk about the Unit 5 quiz. All right, first thing is we're dealing with triangles. All right, so we have to find the area of the triangle. Now, there's two ways you can do this. All right, you can find all the sides. All right, so you can find all the sides, which means you'd have to do that big old square root formula. All right, or you can do the side angle side. All right, now, again, understand that the information that's given right now, you cannot just plug into an equation and just go ahead and get the area. It doesn't work that way. You have to find certain components. So, like for example, if you notice that you have, yeah, and I'm going to use side angle side. All right, so side angle side means I have two sides. However, I need to find this angle R in between it. All right, so that's what I need to do. You just can't take two sides and then one angle that's clearly not in between them. All right, that's why it's called side angle side. All right, so we got to find angle R. All right, now remember when you are looking at a triangle, the first thing you ask is, can I make a pair of corresponding parts? And if you notice, you have this angle and this opposite side, so I can use law of sines. So I'm going to set it up as 12.9 over sine of 31 is equal to, I have 10, and I'm going to find angle P. All right, so it'll be sine P. All right, you cross multiply and solve, and angle P ends up being, and let me clean this up, and I'm purposely going fast just so I can get through it without a very long video. However, you might have to go back and check and read or watch it again. All right, so angle P ends up being 23.5. All right, but remember, I'm looking for angle R. Going off of the rule of triangles, remember triangles always equal 180 degrees. So I'm going to take 180 degrees and I'm going to subtract the two angles. And when I do that, I get angle R being 125.5 degrees, right? So 125.5, all right? So now I have my side angle side, all right? So the formula is, I'm just going to do 0.5 rather than doing 1/2 times my two sides, which is 10, 12.9, and then sine of 125.5 degrees. Plug it in your calculator, you get 52.5 for your area. All right, find the equation. Now, first off, I'm looking and I notice that, hey, my x value is positive. However, my y value is negative. So I'm going to put my x's first and then my y second. So that's 9x squared plus 162x minus 8y squared plus 16y is equal to -1. All right. Now, remember, you can't do order of operation, or not order of operations. You can't do complete the square when there's a coefficient in front of x squared. So I'm going to factor a 9 out, and I'm going to factor out a -8 out here. So that is 9 parenthesis x squared plus 18x something. All right, because remember, I'm just leaving a space for completing the square. -8 y squared minus 2y something is equal to -1. All right, now I'm going to take this 18 right here, and I'm going to divide it by 2 and square it, and I get positive 81. However, because of the fact that this 81 is in a parenthesis with 9, I'm going to take 81 times 9, and I get positive 729. All right, now for the -2y divided by 2 and square, you get positive 1. All right, now again, positive 1 times is -8, and I get positive 8. Correction. Wow, -8, sorry. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and factor and simplify in the same step. So it turns into 9x squared, I'll do it right, 9x plus 9 squared minus 8y minus 1 squared is equal to 720. Now at this point, you divide everything by 720, and you end up with x plus 9 squared over 80. Now, some student asked, hey, this is not a perfect square, or my denominators aren't a perfect square. It's okay. We've always been working with perfect square denominators, but they are out there that are not perfect squares. So that is your answer. All right, next is focus and directrix. All right, so I know because of the fact that I'm dealing with parabolas, I know it's going to be something something squared is equal to something on the outside, something something. All right, I know it's going to look like that. However, I don't know if I'm starting with x or y. So I'm going to go ahead and graph the thing just to give me an idea. All right, so y is equal to -8. So I'm just going to guesstimate, say -8 is down here. So I'm just going to label y is equal to -8 in there. Focus is 810. Again, just going to guesstimate. I'm going to put 810 right here. Now, kind of ran out of space here. So 810. I'm not going to put this in parentheses just because sometimes parentheses make it a little harder to read. All right. Now, first thing I notice is that my focus is here, and I know that the parabola is dot curve line. All right, it's going to look like this. All right, now because of the fact that I know that if anything starts with x, it's going to open up or down. I know it's going to be x here and it's going to be y here. Because with the focus being here, it's got to open like this. All right, but the question is, where is that spot? All right, so I'll move my timer here if I can. Undo that. All right, I'm going to count from my focus all the way to my directrix. All right, that is a grand total of 18. Now, the center or the vertex of the parabola is going to be right in the middle of it. So I know I'm not drawing this to scale, but it's going to be about right there. And of course, it's going to open up. All right. Now, when I drop 9 or if I raise 9, either way, I'm going to get a center of 8, comma 1. All right. So remember, in your parentheses, you're going opposite. So it's going to be 8. I was really off on that 810. I should have moved a little further over. Just notice that it'll be -8, and it'll be +1. All right. Now, I know now that the distance from these two is 9. All right. Now, remember, you always take whatever this number is, multiply it by 4, and you'll get 36. Yes, 36. But since it's opening up, it's going to be a positive 36. All right. Next question. All right. So it says given AB. First thing I need to do is I need to find the components of AB. So we're at 0 at -7. I decreased by 7 at -10. Now I'm at 9. I increased by 19. All right. Next one will be CD. I subtracted 7 again because I went from 8 to 1, and I went from 8 to 4, -4. Now, once you have your components, now it's time to actually do the operation. That's 2. All right. So I'm going to take whatever's on the outside and multiply it by what's on the inside. All right. So when I do that, I get 42, comma, -114, and I get positive 14, and I get positive 8. Now, the thing is, here's what I want you to pay attention to. When I take this -2 and literally put into the component here, I'm now left with a void right here. Well, what goes there? It defaults to a plus. So now I'm going to add my two x components, get 56, and I'm going to combine my two y components and get -106. There we go. All right. Okay, so John is trying to row his boat across the river. All right. Now, the thing is, when you're dealing with this, you got to figure out exactly what are you dealing with when it comes to degrees. So that's 0 degrees, that's 90 degrees, that's 180 degrees, and this is 270 degrees. All right. He's trying to row his boat across the river. If y'all notice, he's going east. East is 0 degrees. All right. And he's also going at 7 miles per hour. So my magnitude is 7, and my direction is 0. So I'm going to say 7 cosine 0, 7 sine 0. Right? And I'm going to get my component of 7, 0. Next, if you notice, the river's flowing south. All right. Now, south, if you notice from your degrees here, that's 270. All right. So that's going to be 4 cosine 270, 4 sine 270. You do the math, and you get 0, -4. So when I add my components, I get 7, -4. All right. Now, if you screw up on the component, everything else kind of falls apart, but we're going to keep going. Now, to find the magnitude, remember what you're going to do is you're going to take your x squared, your y squared, and then that'll give you your magnitude squared. So 7 squared plus -4 squared, square root that, you get 8.1. Now, remember, the direction is inverse tan y over x. All right. Now, if you notice, 7, -4 would be found in quadrant 4. And if anything is found in quadrant 4, you're going to add 360 degrees after you do the inverse tan, which gives you 330 degrees, 330.3 degrees. All right. Next one, question 10. All right. Now remember also your degrees here, 0, 90, 180, 270. All right. You always read from the X. All right. So the thing is, if you're walking, and my students will know what I'm talking about, think of it like a map. If I'm walking, I'm making the conclusion that I run into the arrow, I run into this arrow 60 degrees before 90. All right. So that means I ran into it 60 degrees before 90. But remember, you always measure this direction up. So how far did you travel if you stopped 60 degrees before 90? Well, you stopped at 30 degrees. So that is what the angle is. So the angle is going to be, or the operation will be 20 cosine 30, 20 sine 30. All right. Let's clean up my picture again. All right. And I'm going to use the walking analogy again. Most students understand the walking analogy. We're walking, and stop. We hit our next vector. Now, again, pay attention to the fact that we have 50 degrees right next to 180. However, it's before 180. All right, so basically your conclusion is I ran into my vector 50 degrees before I hit 180. So that would be subtraction. So it'll be 30 cosine 130, and then it'll be 30 sine 130. All right, moving on. All right, we're still walking. All right, we passed the 270 and we're keep going. Now, again, understand, we hit our next vector 40 degrees after 270. Again, pay attention, 40 degrees after 270, which means we're going to add those two vectors, or add those 2 degrees. So that means it'll be 40 cosine 310, 40 sine 310. And you would get your vectors. Now, I'm going to speed up a little bit just because of time's sake. I'm assuming you guys can do the vector operations with your calculator, all right? If you can't, make sure you ask me or Mrs. Vetrano. You're going to add all this information up, and your component will be 23.7 and then 2.4, all right? Now, the magnitude, again, is x squared, y squared, magnitude squared, which is 23.8. And then, of course, to find my angle, I would inverse tan. But pay attention to the fact that, hey, these components would actually be found in quadrant 1, so you are not adding any degrees to anything after you do inverse tan. All right, question number 11. Remember, you always start at the origin, so we always start here. All right. Now, it says we are going to graph this operation here. All right. Now remember what -2 means. 2 means obviously 2 arrows. All right. And the negative means opposite. So 2 opposite arrows. So if B is 4, -1, then that means I'm going to go -4, +1. 2 of them. So I'm drawing. Here I am drawing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. All right, 2 arrows. All right. You can actually look at it as almost as if it's -2b, comma, comma, comma. So you're not really adding them, you're just drawing them. So 2c, all right, 2 C's. So from where we stopped here, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. All right. Next is -3a. All right, so a is -2, 4. The opposite will be 2, -4. All right. So we're going to go to the right 2 and then down 4, to the right 2, down 4, 3 times, sorry. Right 2 and -4. And then -2d, which means we're going opposite of what's there. So -4. And there we go. That's it. Our last one here, and that is we are creating a chart. We're creating a chart based off of this information. We did this on Wednesday. So it's going to be T, your X, and your Y. And I'm drawing all over this because I don't have room to write at the moment. So hopefully it's not going to screw anybody up. So what you're going to do is you're going to take 0, you're going to plug it in for T to get your X coordinate, and then you're going to plug it into Y to get your next coordinate. So when I do that, that gives you 0. I mean, literally, x is equal to 2 times 0. And then y ends up being 1. All right? Next is you're going to take your 2, you do the same thing. 2 plugged into the x will give you 4, and then 2 plugged in there, which gives you negative zero point 0.5. I'm just going to do this one just because um, I want to at least do one without 0 here. And I'm looking at the time. I'm trying to make it before the. There it is, the announcements. Let me pause. All right, announcements are done. All right, so what you're doing is order operations. Now, if you're using your calculator, you just plug it in and you're good to go. But if you're doing the old-fashioned way, zero point 0.5 times 4 plus 6 plus 1, which gives you, I believe that gave you 5. All right, and you just keep going for this one as well as this one as well. All right, now your answer for this particular question, you should have gotten, if you did it correctly, a point at 0, 1, a point at 4, 5, another point at 8, 5, and then lastly 12, 1, which puts you right there. So when you draw it, it looks something like that, and that is that. So hopefully that all made sense. Let me know if you have any questions. Have a good day. Take